Welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing, and congratulations to Chris Billam-Smith, who moves to 18 wins, 1 defeat. That was on points to Richard Riakporhe, 12 KOs. He outpoints on a majority decision, and we'll get to that in a moment, Lawrence Okoli, and becomes a new WBO cruiserweight champ. Now, sometimes there are fights where you don't expect anything. You think this is going to be a bore fest, or this is going to be more of a wrestling match. And you know what? Sometimes they surprise you. Sometimes there's just so much going on, not necessarily boxing. Maybe there's some sort of eventful stuff going on that adds a strange sort of narrative as the fight unfolds, and then the pendulum will swing one way then the other, and you'll be thinking, well, so and so's winning, but the opponent's coming on strong, and and it's not necessarily that it's a great boxing spectacle. It's just an absorbing, sort of, as you watch it live, and a sort of absorbing event or a scene, an absorbing thing to watch. This was one of those contests because I expected nothing from this fight. I thought it would be, I picked Okoli to win. I thought he would win probably a closest decision, 115, 113, 116, 112. I thought he might have Billam-Smith on the floor. I didn't think for a moment Billam-Smith would put him on the floor. In fact, he did. He put him on the floor 3 times. We'll get to that again in a minute. But this fight was not a great spectacle. It just wasn't in a boxing sense. But it was very memorable because of the atmosphere in Bournemouth, the way it unfolded, the events that took place. So let's start with the opening round. Billam-Smith came out quite aggressively in the first 30 seconds, and it was immediately noticeable how big Okoli is. He's just huge for a cruiserweight, and Billam-Smith is your standard size cruiserweight, has to lose a bit of weight, but makes the weight probably quite easily. Okoli, how the hell he makes the weight, I do not know. Enormous guy for a cruiser, much taller, and I think he's 3 inches to 2 inches taller than Billam-Smith, but broader shouldered, looks bigger. And at one point in the first round, Billam-Smith sort of walked onto a right hand, and he took it well, but it was kind of a bit of a warning sign, shall we say. And I thought, whoa, the crowd sort of oohed and ahed. It's in Bournemouth. It was at the Vitality Stadium, so Billam-Smith's in his backyard. Second round, I gave to Okoli. I gave the first to Okoli. I gave the second round to Okoli. I think I might have given him the third as well. I can't remember offhand. But then things really got interesting in the fourth, because Okoli had already begun to sort of lunge forward. At times he just extends his arms and pushes the opponent back and grabbing and holding. But it's very noticeable in, I think, maybe the third round, third round, and certainly in the fourth. When he does that, he tries to grab the guy with the left hand. He's an orthodox fighter, and he hangs his right hand very low and almost stands side on. Well, he did this once too often, because Billam-Smith, who was trying desperately to stick to his game plan, wasn't getting a chance to implement it because Okoli was just all over him. It was like trying to wrestle an octopus. But for once, he timed him coming in, and he caught Okoli with a perfect left hook on the jaw and put him over. And it's the first time in Okoli's career that he's been on the floor. The crowd erupted, fantastic scenes. And then he tried to finish him off. Okoli, I mean, if you think Okoli was grabbing and holding before he was on the floor, as soon as he got up, and he did look a bit shaken. His legs weren't rubber, but he looked a bit all at sea. I mean, after that knockdown, he was desperately trying to smother Billam-Smith, who was, equally desperately trying to land punches and finish the guy off. But Okoli survived the fourth round. And then in the fifth, Marcus McDonald, who was the referee, much, much smaller, grey-haired fella, probably nearing retirement age, he'd had enough of this constant nonsense from Okoli. He'd warned him several times to stop grabbing and holding, stop pushing, stop wrestling. He took a point off. So that's 2 consecutive rounds that Billam-Smith has won 10-8, you would assume. Sixth round, I think it was, I can't remember much about the sixth, to be honest with you. It was, if memory serves, I think Billam-Smith edged it, but he'd used up a lot of energy in that fourth round trying to get rid of Okoli, and it was a bit telling, a bit sort of, he was trying to get his second wind. I think that's the impression I got. Anyway, I could be wrong about that. In the seventh round, it was more of the same. Again, more wrestling from Okoli, more fiddling around and hanging on. And oh God, it was just, you lose the will to live watching this rubbish. But there's no doubt about it. Okolie had the much, much heavier hands, And yet at the same time, on the evidence of this fight, Billam-Smith's got the better chin. Because occasionally Okolie would land an almighty wallop, almost always the right hand. And Billam-Smith would shudder and take it. But in the 7th round, more holding, Marcus McDonald lost patience again, takes a second point off Okolie. So that's a knockdown, that's a 10-8 round probably. 2 other rounds, probably 10-8s to Billam-Smith. Okolie, this is the 7th round, so the fight's over the halfway mark. And Okolie already is digging himself a hole in point with a points deficit. And then he starts to really get his skates on. He starts to really think, I've got to do something here. And Sugar Hill, who was in his corner, was urging him, you've got to take this guy out. He tears forward. I mean, he's flailing away. I tell you, he's sort of flopping and jumping in and wrestling and cuffing. And Billam-Smith, that the smaller man looks the smaller man because he puts his earmuffs on. He at one point, I think, in one of the rounds, he was in the corner for about 30 seconds. And he wasn't hurt in any shape or form. I mean, he was covering up very, very well and showing a very good chin. But Okolie knows his title's slipping away and he's letting the punches go. And this carried on into the 10th round when suddenly, I think Billam-Smith was on the ropes. He lets his own hands go and he clips Okolie just as Okolie's coming in. Again, Okolie bending at the waist, flailing away with both hands. He gets clipped and it does perturb him. I don't think it shakes him that much. But Billam-Smith immediately edges forward, lets his hands go, and there's a big cuffing his own cuffing right hand, and I think he half pulled Okolie to the floor. But Marcus McDonald called that the second knockdown of the fight. I'm not sure whether it was a knockdown. It's a bit dubious, to be honest. By this point, by the way, Billam-Smith had a really horrendous gash along his left eyebrow. His entire left eyebrow looked unzipped. But he's got 2 knockdowns and Okolie's had 2 points taken off. Okay, in the 5th and the 7th. The knockdowns occurring in the 4th and the 10th. So in the 11th round, I mean, Okolie's got to be thinking, I've got to knock this guy out to win. He came out in the 11th. Again, more of the same, totally open, just slinging huge bombs, trying to make up the points deficit. Gets clipped again by Billam-Smith, who wasn't throwing that many punches by this point. He looked sort of worn out and did look exhausted. But he clipped Okolie coming in again, Okolie wide open. Down goes Okolie, a 3rd knockdown. So we've got 3 knockdowns against Okolie and we got 2 points off for general infringements. So come the 12th round, Okolie needs to knock out without a shadow of a doubt. Billam-Smith, exhausted, manages to hang on, covers up well, plays it kind of safe. One guy at that point, I would say Billam-Smith, didn't seem capable of throwing any kind of structured, shall we say, textbook punches. He was just too tired. And Okolie, the other guy, didn't seem to know how to do it. I mean, Okolie looked so amateurish in this fight for such long periods. It was frightening to see. The fight ends and the 12th round, all over. Who's won? Well, we presume that it's going to be points, probably wide, for Billam-Smith. But it's not, because the first scorecard is 112-112. I don't know what the hell that is. Yeah, all right. 112-112. Then one of the guys had it, I had it, 116-107. That was my card. And one of the judges agreed with me. I can't remember the name of the judge. And the other judge had it at 115-108. And the 2 winning cards were for Chris Billam-Smith, who becomes the new WBO cruiserweight champion. It was a terrific spectacle, not a great boxing match. And for some reason, Okolie's, infamous tactics of grabbing, holding, punching on the brain, all the stuff he does, the wrestling, it kind of played into the drama, which was the really strange bit. And at one point, I think it was George Groves who was on commentary, said, well, no, it wasn't. It was Andy Clark, I think, on Sky, the Sky commentary team said, well, we can't blame every infringement on Okolie. Yes, we can, because Okolie was the one making all the infringements. He was the one trying to rough the guy. And he did. He tried to ragdoll Billam-Smith early on in the fight. He was throwing him around. And I mean, it's called boxing. It's called boxing. And for a guy the size of Okolie to neglect his superior, natural attributes, I don't understand. He deserved to have those 2 points taken off. You could argue that 2 of the knockdowns were a bit questionable. Certainly the second one was. But the one in the 4th round was a clear knockdown. And definitely, I think the right man won, definitely. And of course, Okolie, who was hailed by Mr. Shalom, a boxer, as Sky's face of boxing, picks up his first loss. But I think there is a rematch clause, so it'll be interesting to see what happens here. But did you see this fight? I urge you to go and see it if you didn't. If you did see it, what did you think of it? Leave your comments below. Let's have a discussion about this, because I thought it was very, very entertaining, even though it wasn't a great boxing match. Let me know your thoughts. If you're new to the channel, you could subscribe. That'd be fantastic. Hit the subscribe button. Takes a second, and spread the word about Joe Stunner Boxing. And also like the video, because I think they count the likes. The YouTube doing it. It promotes the channel or something. If you could do that, that'd be a big help. Thanks for your time, as always. It's not a bad fight. Check it out and leave your comments below. I'm looking forward to seeing them. Bye-bye for now.